welcome back. Um, in this video, we're going to be looking at Chapter 8, so still continuing on with middle childhood, but looking at the social world, so the environmental factors, the psychosocial development side of things, of what's going on here. So just like always, if you want to follow along in the book, we're in Chapter 8, starts on page 275 in our book, or if you want to do the PowerPoints, you can follow them, find them on D2L where you found the video. Or if you want to just listen, that's totally fine also. Don't forget to listen for the 4 random facts as we go. So that way you can get credit for watching the lecture. And do the quizzes, both the one for the lecture as well as the one for the chapter. All right. So yeah, let's go ahead and get rolling. So we covered a lot already, right? In Chapter 7, looking at this age group, this approximately 6 to 11, give or take. This is that stage where we're just really refining our skills, finding where we really thrive, and moving through that. Okay, so slide 2. Let's jump right on in. Slide 2, the nature of child, part 1. There's a drive for independence from parents, which expands the social world. This is the point in life where the first 5 or 6 years of life basically are very, very much attached to the parent. You're going to have some children that are a little bit more independent, but generally speaking, that it's pretty connected to the parent. Around age 6 or 7, you'll begin to see the beginnings of pulling away from the parents. Friends will start to become more important. They'll begin to do more and more things for themselves, generally, especially if encouraged to. That'll be a positive thing there. But rather than directly learning from their teachers so much, they still are learning from the teachers very much, including their parents. But they begin to learn more and more from their peers as far as their social understanding of how the world works and all of that. So yeah, friends are beginning to take the place of family. That doesn't mean that they totally do by any means. The family is still the most important aspect of this whole situation. But friends are beginning to fill in the gap. By adolescence, we're going to find that friends become more and more important in our development. And so away we go. Slide 3, the nature of the child, part 2. Erikson's insight. So industry versus inferiority is what Erikson said is this stage. This is the 4th of Erikson's stages. So hopefully we've made it through the first 3 stages successfully, made it through those gates or those psychosocial crises. But at this point, what we're really beginning to understand is what is it that we are good at, and are we better at it than other people? Okay. So there's this, like it says, there's a tension between productivity and incompetence. There's this desire to really understand what we are, and we want to be better at it than other people. Okay. We also hope that whatever it is that we happen to be good at is appreciated by other people as well, right? We want to be valued for what it is that we are capable of. So that's kind of the driving factor within this stage. Along with this, we begin to develop a sense of ourselves, right? And we begin to see ourselves either as successful, as industrious, or as inferior, right? Competent versus incompetent, all those kinds of things, right? We're trying to figure out again, where do we fit? Where do I really thrive? And we continue to look at the question of who do I belong to, as far as who is my tribe? Am I an athlete? Am I a nerd, quote unquote, or geek, whatever? Am I a music person, art person? Am I a animal lover, right? Am I really good with animals and science, maybe? Do I love rocks? Do I love dancing? There's so many possibilities, right? Books, maybe you're a literature geek, and that's amazing. But figuring out what it is, where you fit. Okay, this is what this stage is all about. So you're not going to have these massive leaps as much, but if we successfully make it through this stage, we'll come out the other end with a sense of confidence in who we are and what we're capable of. If we don't, we could struggle with basically, feelings of inadequacy and inferiority later in life. So, Okay, slide 4. Signs of psychosocial maturation over the years of middle childhood. Responsibly perform specific chores, right? It begins to show up at this point. Um, and hopefully they'll actually take it on, right? Some kids will be more responsible than others. But yeah, that's going to be a kind of a go-to. Manage a weekly allowance and activities, so they're kind of able to start taking control of their own calendar, and how things are working. And obviously, like a 6-year-old is not going to be as good at this as like an 11-year-old, but it'll depend upon where they're at in this process. Complete homework, generally on their own. They might need a little bit of, like go do it, but they'll do it on their own. Attempting to conform to peers, you're going to suddenly start having, all the little group of kids start dressing exactly the same. And they'll call each other, or at least they used to. They'll probably text each other nowadays. But anyway, they contact each other and are like, we're all wearing blue tomorrow, or whatever. And then they try to, and you don't want to be the poor little kid that missed the memo, right? And that's going to be, again, you're finding your tribe. You're finding your clan of who you belong to. You're going to express preferences for after-school hours. You're beginning to understand who you are, what you like, what you don't like, right? A 4-year-old, I could stick him down with some crayons and some paper, and he'd draw, and then I could give him a random instrument, and he'd play it, and then I could, be like, let's dance to music, and he'd dance to it fine, right? There'd be no preferences necessarily. By this point, they're beginning to understand like what it is that they actually like, right? So you might have the kid that enjoys chess. You might have the kid that likes, again, dance or music or something like that. You might have a kid that likes karate and judo. You might have a kid that likes sports, football, basketball, baseball, something like that. All of those possibilities. You might have a kid that just likes hanging out, right? Likes board games, whatever. Okay. Accept some responsibility for pets and younger children. They're beginning to be able to kind of take on that role, and where other things that are reliant upon them, they can take care of them. And they begin to strive for independence from their parents. Okay. And that's going to be, that really is kind of the defining point of this stage of development. Okay. And it's going to differ from child to child. Slide 5, the nature of the child, part 3, parental reactions. So it's a shift from care and provision, right? We go from basically the life support system of these children to engagement and dialogue, discussion, and shared activities. They're advancing in their activities, so now they're able to actually participate with you. You're not just guiding them fully. Okay, there still is elements of guiding, and it continues, but it'll be lessening more and more as they move through this process. So various levels of release from parental supervision and provision of more autonomy, right? We're giving them more and more freedom as they prove themselves capable of being able to handle that responsibility, whatever that may be. Time spent with parents will decrease during this time, and time spent either alone, I should say with peers, and my thing actually says in parents. Time spent alone or with peers will increase. Their friends become more and more important in this stage. Okay. This can be hard. This can be super hard for the parent because it's an alteration of everything that they've known themselves to be in this relationship as parent and child. So you're having to kind of restructure ourselves as well as helping the child to restructure their boundaries and where they stand. Okay. And again, it's going to differ from child to child, right? One kiddo is going to be totally like more mature and capable of different things at age 6, 7, 8. Other kids, you might be lucky if they're mature enough to do some of these things at age 9 or 10. So it's a person by person kind of a thing. It can differ even within the same families, so just be aware of that too. Let's see. The nature of child, part 4, slide 6. Self-concept. So development, remember, our sense of self begins to form somewhere around 1.5 years, give or take. We start to see ourselves as separate from the other. And then through this point, we're basically continuing to recognize like how separate I am from the world around me, as well as the other people and all of these. So in this case, development is more specific and logical ideas about personal intelligence, personality, abilities, gender, and ethnic background. These are all going to, we're going to get the details of this, right? We had kind of vague ideas of them. Now we're getting them in more in concrete terms. Measurement of self to others in relation to own abilities, social status, and other attributes. Generally, assuming we went through the stage 3 relatively well, we'll have a decent idea, a decent understanding of kind of where we are compared to others. We're more capable of understanding that I'm not necessarily the best at it, but I might be pretty darn good at it, right? Or I might at least love it. I might enjoy it, even if I'm not the greatest at it. And so in those cases, the child will begin to be capable of doing it because they like it or something like that, rather than just because they're good at it. A lot of times being good at something is the motivator that keeps them going with it, right? They're like exceptionally good. They're better than everyone else. But when that is the only motivator, once they hit an environment where they are no longer the best, there's a tendency to kind of fall out of it. They burn out quickly with that. So formulation of a more reality-grounded view of self. With that, though, there's a rise of self-criticism and self-consciousness. 4-year-old, 5-year-old kid, their favorite song comes on the radio and they're just dancing away, right? They love it. This age, they might start to realize that other people might be judging them. Okay, this really becomes a factor when they hit adolescence. So in the next chapters after this one, that aspect really becomes a thing. But at this point, they're starting to look at it, and everything that they're producing isn't necessarily the best that they could do. They see that there is room for improvement. Again, if it's well-rounded, that self-criticism will be a critique, but in a way that is actually constructive to themselves. If they haven't been taught well in this stage, as the self-criticism rises, it can become kind of a neurotic kind of issue where it actually can overpower them and shut them down and keep them from doing things. Like it can turn itself into a level of perfectionism, where if they can't do it perfectly, why even bother? And that needs to be kind of nipped in the bud at this point in order to help them, again, find their true potential. Understanding that even though it's not perfect yet, or even if it's not as good as they wish it was yet, the key word there is yet, right? You keep working on it and you get better. And so that's the trick to pick up in this stage. Okay. The nature of the child, part 5. Children who affirm pride in their gender and ethnicity are likely to develop healthy self-esteem, right? Pride is good to a certain level, and that's what we're looking for here. So a sense of like they're comfortable with who they are. Some face social prejudice related to their minority or religious group membership. And developing a sense of pride is more effective for self-confidence than directly preparing children for prejudice. One example I have of this one, I have a friend, or had a friend, when we were in college together. He was Orthodox Jewish. He was raised up in New York. And he had the curls and everything when he was a kid. And he was made fun of a lot because of the fact that he looked different, right? He dressed differently than everybody else. It's interesting that he actually went to like a more public school rather than a Jewish school, which is kind of traditional in that. But with that, his parents did a very good job of giving him confidence in who he was. Even the fact that they're like, man, we've been persecuted all through history, and so therefore you kind of expect that, be okay with that. Don't just take it necessarily, but at the same time, don't let it get to you. And he embraced that, and he ended up making really good friends because of the fact that even though he was different, he was okay with it. He was comfortable with who he was. He also got really good with humor, which was helpful. But that's that sense of pride. That humor actually was a tie-in to that sense of pride and who he was, and who he came from. He looked at all of the strength of his people, was kind of how he saw it, how his parents gave it to him. So instead of being like, here's what you do if this happens, you blah, 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 they're like, this is who you are. Embrace that, right? Love the fact that this is you. And he did, and it worked. Okay. Slide 8, the nature of the child, part 6, culture and self-esteem. So cultures and families differ in which attitudes and accomplishments they value, right? So we were looking at like the different learning styles, right? Or the different ways of learning, intelligences. So you might have generally certain kinds of intelligences are going to run in a family. The same thing can actually be cultural, right? A culture might hold up in high regard or high esteem one thing, and put something else down, whereas a different culture might be the flip-flop of those things, right? And so what you are good at might not be like, oh, this is amazing in this given culture, the culture maybe that you're raised in, but it might be held in higher regard in a different one. So uh, those differences can have an effect upon us. Emerging self-perception benefits academic and social competence. Again, as we are more aware of who we are and what we're capable of, generally we are able to apply ourselves more deeply to our tasks. Praise for process, not static qualities, encourages growth. Being told you're smart does you no good. Okay. Being told you're handsome or cute or beautiful or whatever does you no good. If anything, it gives you the wrong sense of pride, because you start to take pride in what you are now. Being praised for the fact that you pushed through even when you didn't want to, and you accomplished such and such a goal. Maybe even if you didn't do as good as you wanted to, but the fact that you pushed through it, even though you didn't want to push through it, that praising, that kind of a thing, is going to be beneficial. Okay. When they do things that they should do without being asked or things like that, praising the fact that they just did it is beneficial. Okay. So the praise here is the learning process. You're praising the fact that they're improving themselves in a given action, not praising something that's just part of who they are, right? If you're just told over and over again, oh, you're so smart, oh, you're the smartest kid, oh, this. What's interesting is those kids that get told that, oftentimes when something comes up and it actually is difficult, they collapse. There's been study after study that has shown that they don't develop the grit or the follow through to be able to basically keep pushing through when things get tough. It's the kids who have had to struggle and then are praised for that struggle. Those are the kids that struggle actually gives you that grit, that push through, that willingness to go above and beyond what is required of you in many cases in order to accomplish the goal. So notice and value of material possessions increases in this time, right? Everyone wants to dress alike. All of a sudden, I remember when I was a kid, there was polo shirts, and there was the one with the little alligator on it. That little alligator was really important for some reason. I don't even know what the brand was, but it seemed like all of a sudden all the boys had these polo shirts with this alligator, and I was like, whatever. Jinko jeans, right? The big old giant jeans. I probably just dated myself, but with the pockets you could like stick loaves of French bread in them and stuff. They're huge. I had a bunch of friends that wore them. What's funny is, so I had friends that were skateboarder kids at that time, and I like skateboarding too. But I always wore my like cowboy, close cut jeans, and they had these big old baggy jeans, and I always thought it was ridiculous because they'd like go to do a trick and their skateboard would shoot up their pants and they'd lose it, whereas I could easily keep it out there. But different. I don't know. I was always the oddball. I never had the look of everyone else, but so maybe that wasn't as big a deal. I was more interested in who they were and what they were capable of doing versus what they were wearing or what they had. So, but that starts to become more important to most kids in this age group. I'm realizing more and more, like again, as I learn psychology, I'm realizing I was a weird little kid. The nature of the child, part 7, resilience, capacity to adapt well to significant adversity and to overcome serious stress. So resilience is something different than just being able to do things or push through. The key word there is significant adversity or serious stress. So these are things that typically most kids would fold under it. So a resilient kid is a kid who they manage to push through it, even though there's enough stress that would generally make kids collapse. So important components: resilience is dynamic, not a stable trait. Just because you're resilient in one area doesn't mean you're going to be resilient in all areas. And you could be resilient today and not tomorrow. Or you could be unresilient today and then build resilience for tomorrow. Resilience is a positive adaptation to stress, and adversity must be significant for it to truly be considered resilience. Okay. If you look at page 280, there's a table that kind of shows the differences and changes in how we view resilience up until 2017. So the thing to look at is like a kid might be super resilient. Like I've heard stories, right? Being a psychologist and counselor, that was the thing. I heard a lot of stories, and I was like, my goodness, don't even know how you like survived your childhood or whatever. But they showed resilience in that environment in that way. But then something that would seem like a relatively easy thing, right? Something that doesn't seem that stressful would break them. Okay. They were resilient in this environment, struggled in this one. So just because you're resilient in one area doesn't mean that that's going to be an overarching resilience in every way. But resilience, what it could look like, so again, example, the adaptations to stress things. Like, let's say you're from a family where maybe both parents are druggies or alcoholics or something, right? So you don't have a real parent figure in your life. So you go out and find one. Okay, you find a man or a woman who is basically able to kind of fill in, become like a surrogate mother or surrogate father, to fill in the gap that you're missing. That would be a child who's resilient, right? They find ways to deal with the lack that they have in their life. But yeah, the significant side of things also, that where it has to be something tough. It's something that would generally overwhelm most kids. But again, keep in mind, resilience, we only have so much strength to go through, right? If it just keeps coming and coming and coming, at some point, there's going to be that straw that breaks the camel's back. You might be excellent at dealing with all these things, and then something minor, and it just bowls you over. Okay. All right. First random fact. If you cut a starfish, it won't bleed because they don't have any blood. Starfish actually, instead of using blood, they use seawater to circulate the nutrients through their system. And so if you cut a starfish, seawater will come out. But that's what they use instead of the blood. Weird. Okay. Also, if you cut up a starfish and throw them out there, there's a good chance that all those pieces will regenerate. So if you have like a 5-legged starfish and you cut each leg off, and throw it out in the ocean, there's a decent chance that all 5 of those, you end up with 5 more starfish. There was actually a fishing town that had issues with starfish, and they tried to do that back like 100 years ago to get rid of them, and they ended up having this explosion of starfish because of the all these cut up starfish regenerating. Anyway, weird stuff. Okay, next slide, slide 10. The nature of the child, part 8, cumulative stress. So stress accumulates over time, and this is true for every age. Doesn't matter when you are. Okay. Stress builds and piles, right? Daily hassles can be more detrimental than isolated major stress. Kids especially, one big stress event, they can generally bounce back from that pretty easily, even if it's a huge one. It's the small stresses that build up over time that you typically wear us down. Because what that does is it slowly builds up your cortisol levels as well as other stress hormones. Your adrenal glands and everything will be built up, or will start to kind of fizzle out. And over time, if you picture hormones like a bucket, and you're filling it at a set rate, and when you experience a stressful event, you're dipping into those hormones and pouring it out. Okay. Over time, if you're dipping out of the bucket at a faster rate than it's coming in, you basically are going to burn, like hormonally, you're going to burn out, where you have a depletion of those. So it'd be the same as like driving your car till it ran out of gas, right? At some point, you got to give your car a chance to recharge or refill. Same with us. We got to give our glands a chance to refill, as well as get those hormones out of your system so you don't cause long-term damage. Social context is imperative. So some ideas of like that are highly stressful are gonna be like child soldiers, homeless children where there's that lack of security, separation after natural disaster, where like Hurricane Katrina, over a decade ago, where all those families had to move out of Louisiana. And in many cases, the kids might be living with like grandparents or uncles or aunts for a time away from their parents. That kind of a thing it can be extremely stressful for children because of that. There's that lack of security. One of the main things that you're looking for in this age is security and stability. That's what we need, and that's what we want. And that's going to be what reduces the amount of stress that we have. Everything else can be stressful, but if you have security and stability in your home, generally those stresses you can weather the storm. Okay. Slide 11, cognitive coping. Cognitive coping factors contributing to resilience. So child's interpretation of events is a big one. So example on that one. Okay. I met a man. I didn't spend very much time with him at all, but I met him at a conference that I went to. And when he was a kid, he was a refugee. I don't know where he was from. Anyway, I can't remember where he was from. But anyway, when he was a kid, he remembers he woke up in the middle of the night. His dad came right into his room and woke up in the middle of the night and said, grab your coat, we need to go. And the kid, he was like, what? Kind of like, why? He's like, grab your coat, we need to go. We're playing. Basically, he started putting like, we're playing a game of tag, and we got to go because they're it. Well, it turned out they were on the losing side of a conflict in the country he was from. And the group that was coming in was going to try to kill the family. And so the dad, the mom, and the children ran out the back door as these guys that were coming to kill them ran in the front door. And they were on the run for over 4 weeks. And during that 4-week period, somehow the parents managed to keep all of their kids. The oldest kid at this time, I think, was 9, if I remember the story right. But all of the kids, he had 4 kids. All 4 kids thought that they were in a big game, and they were playing the game to the best of their ability. And when it was all said and done, I honestly couldn't even imagine this. Like, as the parent, I'm like, oh my gosh. But escaping basically time after time, all these life-threatening situations, they managed to get out of the country and escape to safety. But because of the interpretation, the kids actually were all having fun during this, what could have been an unbelievably stressful situation. So yeah, interpretation makes a big deal. Okay. Support of family and community. In that case, they had significant support from their family, right? Community, not so much, but family, yes. But if you have that sense of, again, stability and someone backing you, that's extremely important. Personal strengths such as creativity and intelligence. The more intelligent and creative a child is, the more resilient they will be. Basically, the more easily they can handle the stressful events, because they can put spins on it for themselves and look at it from different perspectives. They can come up with different strategies to try to help them deal with a given thing. So it's a big factor there. One thing to be aware of, though, is avoidance of parentification. So parentification is where a child begins to take on the role that is above where they are developmentally. Okay, where the child begins to act more like a parent rather than the child that they are. A lot of times, if the parent or caregiver is like on drugs or things like that, there's a tendency for the child to take on this parentification, where they take on the roles of a grown adult before they're mentally ready for that, and that could be detrimental. The stress from that could be very detrimental to their development. So yeah, don't let as much as you can. If you are in a stressful situation, don't let your children take on the feeling that they are responsible for the well-being of the family. That's the parent's job. Right. So as much as possible, protect the kids from that happening. Okay. Slide 12. Families during middle childhood, part 1. Shared and not shared environments. So most personality traits and intellectual characteristics trace to genes and non-shared environments. So it's generally connected to, obviously, genetic, right? You have a genetic tendency, intelligence, and things like this. So if you come from smart parents, genetically, you have a higher chance of being smart yourself. But it's also going to be influential in all the experiences that you're having as the individual that you are. So your genes that are given to you, plus the nature, nurture, right? The nurture side of things, where your environment is going to basically affect that. So influence of shared environments shrinks with age. Shared environments mean like your immediate family and things like that. Non-shared environments are going to be like the classroom and things like that you end up with. Effects of non-shared environment increases over the course of this age. Slide 13, families during middle childhood, part 2. Remember, recent findings reassert parents' power. Okay, even though the kids are beginning to pull away from the parent at this point, and peers become more and more important, the parent still has power. And in all honesty, the parent's going to have power for the rest of the child's life. Even when they're an adult and no longer a child, the parent still has some level of power. Okay, an important part to play. So children, again, that's in a relatively healthy family. Even if the family's not healthy, the parent is still going to have some power, but it might be a negative in that case. Children raised in the same household by the same parents do not necessarily share the same home environment, right? For one thing, you add on more children. It could be the experience of it. Maybe the parents are better at dealing with the personality of child A versus child B, and so they respond differently to them. The interests might align better. All these different factors, right, will affect that. Even though it's the same environment, technically, it can affect the experience of that environment. Changes in the family affect every family member differently, depending on age and or gender. So when a kid's born or things like that, if the divorce happens, if you adopt children, getting pets, all of these different things, if you move, all these different things can affect each individual differently depending on those factors. Most parents respond to each of their children differently, as they should, because they are individual people who have different needs and different desires. Okay. Slide 14. We're going to kind of keep on rolling here. Families during middle childhood, part 3. Family structure. So there's a couple different things here. Legal and genetic relationships among relatives living in the same home includes nuclear families, extended families, step families, and others. So basically, the two factors that are going to be reliant on family for family structure is genetic connection or legal connection. Outside of that, you aren't officially family. You might have somebody like a family friend or something that feels like family, but the reality is, as far as like legally and psychologically mentioning things, it's the genetic and legal side that matters. Slide 15, families during middle childhood, part 4, family function. So the way a family works to meet the needs of its members. So this is the function of a family is significantly more important than the structure of the family. So you could have, a single mom with 8 kids and be a high functioning family. That'd be a tough one. You could have an extended family where you have mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and an uncle or an aunt or something living with you and, plus a couple kids or whatever. And it could be high functioning. You could have it be low functioning, right? So the function is the key part there. Okay. Tough part is the function. So I can measure. I can look at a family structure and be like, oh, right, they got two parents and 2 kids and blah 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 blah, or single mom or single dad or whatever, right? That's easy to see, easy to take account of. How a family is functioning is much more difficult to pinpoint. Partially because of the fact that, again, each child is going to be different. So, and each individual person within the family structure is going to be different. So what seems like a high functioning family to one person in the family structure, another person in the same family might see that as a low functioning family because their needs aren't getting met. And that's the trick, right? A high functioning family is a family where all the needs of all the members, or at least most of the needs of all the members, are getting met efficiently. Okay, sufficiently. There we go. During middle childhood, families help children by providing basic material necessities, life support, right? Encouraging learning, helping them develop self-respect, nurturing friendships, and fostering harmony and stability. Those are the main pieces that a family should be providing for this age group. And really, these are the main pieces that a family should be providing for every age group. If these needs are being met for every individual, generally speaking, it's going to be a pretty high functioning family. Okay. Next slide. Oh, this is kind of a repeat of what I just said. Family during middle childhood, part 5, needs of children in middle childhood, and that's that list again. Physical necessities, learning, self-respect, peer relationships, and harmony and stability. So yeah, we'll keep on rolling. 17, families during middle childhood, part 6. So family function is more important than structure, like I already said. Children value safety and stability, and that's, again, that we're looking for that structure, right? That sense of lack of change. Everything in the world could be chaotic, but at home, we have this sense of stability. Stability is difficult in military families. Caregivers are discouraged from making changes in that kind of a circumstance. As parents are coming and going if they're in a military situation. The fact that it's also unsure whether or not they'll ever actually even come home adds a sense of extra stress and instability to that kind of a home life. Military family, it can be one of the more challenging forms of raising a family just because of that instability. If you've known anybody who is a military family, or if you are yourself a military family, you can kind of understand that one. Children are displaced because of storms, fire, war, may suffer psychologically. And again, that's going to be kind of reliant or dependent upon how resilient they are in that situation and how stable their family is, right? You might have a sense where we lost our home, but our real home is the family itself and we're all okay. Or things like that. And that's so depending on the individual child, how they view it and all those aspects, it will affect them more or less, suffering in psychological terms. 18, families during middle childhood, part 7. Various family structures. So we're going to look at the two-parent family first. You have the nuclear family. That's going to be your traditional, married mom and dad with the kids, either, any one or more kids that are under the age of 18. Step-parent family, you have a mom or a dad and their biological offspring with a additional parent mixed in. That could be due to divorce. That could be due to being widowed. But basically, you include somebody new into that family. Okay. Adoptive family, or child you don't have biological connection, at least not direct lineage from the parents, but they adopt you into their family. It could be biologically connected, like uncles or aunts or something, but oftentimes it'll be you might not be related by blood at all, just legal connections there. Grandparents alone, grandma and grandpa, plus kids, grandkids, and then possibly two same-sex parents, right? You have if there's a same-sex relationship and they have offspring in some way, shape, or form. With that one, it would be more along the lines of a step-parent family, because you'd have one generally, unless it was adoption, you would have one parent that would be biologically related to you, and then the other parent would be, filling in as the step-parent kind of thing. Okay. Slide 19. Various family structures, single-parent families. So single mother or father, never married. Single mother or father, divorced, separated, or widowed, and that actually is going to look different, right? If let's say you had a single mom or a single dad, and basically that's just always what you've known. There was no long-term connection beyond that. That would look much different than if you knew both parents and one parent leaves, or one parent dies or something like that. That would be a much different shift to the child in the developmental stages compared to if that's always been the case. And then you can possibly also have just one grandparent alone, right? Like grandma or grandpa or something like that alone. In some cases, you can have more than two adults, such as an extended family. You got mom or dad, or mom and dad, plus grandma or grandpa or an uncle or an aunt or something like that. Cousins maybe living with you. Okay, all these kinds of things. That would be an extended family. And polygamous family, where generally you have one dad with multiple wives, right? And you're raised in that kind of a household. It is possible, but rare, that you might also have a, what's the word? It's monogamous, where you have a single mom with multiple men, which one of them is your genetic dad, and kind of a thing. That's rare. That's much more rare than the single dad with multiple wives. But yeah, those are some possibilities for if you have more than two adults. Okay. Slide 20, families during middle childhood, part 9, cohort changes. And you can see that there's a graph on this one. You can see the graph on page 287, looking at the chances of like married, cohabiting, single mothers, or single fathers. More single parent households and more divorces and remarriages, and fewer children per family than in the past, right? We have just recently, unless you include immigrants in the United States, we have just recently dropped below the 2 children per family on average. And so with that change, it's a totally different look of things than what we've ever had in the past. There's also a more willingness for cohabiting instead of getting married. And again, single motherhood is much higher than it used to be. And single fatherhood even is actually a little higher than it used to be. So proportions differ, but problems with non-nuclear families are similar worldwide. Generally speaking, the nuclear family, if it's functioning at all well, is the least stressful form of parenting and family structure. Generally, you can have a terrible nuclear family, but statistically speaking, that's going to be the most comfortable form. Single moms and single dads are going to have more stress because basically there's so much just on them, the individual, compared to if you're sharing that with somebody else. And extended families can be good, but they also can be some challenges. We'll look at that in a few minutes here. But U.S. has more single parents than other developed nations, yet almost 2/3 of all U.S. school-age children live with 2 parents. And so yeah, that's one of those. We have a higher rate of divorce and things in most developed nations as well. as well as just having children outside of marital relations and things like that. It's not that they don't have sex outside of marriage in other countries. It's that we have a stronger tendency of having children outside of a married type of a situation. 21, families during middle childhood, part 10. Family changes, so only one parent and his or her children under age 18 is going to be a common factor, right? 31% of all U.S. school-age children, rates of structure change depend on age of child. So 31% of U.S. school children are living with just one parent. More than half of U.S. children in a single-parent home for at least a year. So they could be due to divorce again, or widowed, or separation, or whatever. But at least for a year of most above, so most of the children in the U.S. will experience living in a single-parent home for at least for longer than a year of their school-age life. Some factors there also. It is generally more stressful on the children in a single-parent family versus being in a nuclear family kind of a situation. And there's several factors with that. One is that in a single-parent home, you're more likely to be struggling with low income because you have just a single parent bringing in the income, plus you have to probably pay for daycare or something like that. So there's additional stresses there. Because of the fact that you're in lower income, there's a tendency for less stability. So you might have to move more often or things like that. So that's a bigger factor. Another factor is if the parents are very young and single, you have additional stress factors because the parent is also trying to get more experience while maybe their jobs aren't, they're not really well developed and things like that. So it adds additional stresses to that family structure. Slide 22, families during middle childhood, part 11, two-parent family. Statistically, the two-parent family works the best on average. Typically, children learn better in school, and there's fewer psychological problems with this. Again, not a guarantee, just statistically, it tends to be better. Okay, you could have I've met people that have terrible nuclear families, right? Not a guarantee by any means. And you could have the most incredible other form of family just as easily. But just statistically speaking, the odds of it are better for you in a nuclear family or two-parent family. Education, earning potential, and emotional maturity increase the rate of marriage and parenthood and decrease the rate of divorce. Basically, you're going to it eyes wide open kind of a thing and not just like an emotional rush. Makes it more likely to stay married, and you're going to basically fully intending to be together. A major predictor of their children's well-being was not the parents' sexual orientation, but their income and stability. Contact increases affection and care. Basically, if you're making enough money where you have that sense of stability, it reduces stress in the parents, which allows them to then interact more with their children, which then also allows them to basically help the child develop as much as possible. So shared parenting decreases child maltreatment risk. When you have more than one parent in a home, the chances of maltreatment are reduced significantly because either one parent fills in the gaps, and or there's the chances of abuse and things like that are lowered when there's two parents present. Okay. Slide 23. Families during middle childhood, part 12. Single fathers and stepfathers. So generally, fathers who do not live with their children become less involved every year. When they move out, if they don't have a constant interaction, it just kind of deteriorates over time. Single parent fathers experience same problems as single mothers, right? Lower income, you got the stress of taking care of everything on your own. So kind of juggling childcare as well as taking care of a home, as well as getting a paycheck and cooking meals and all those kinds of things. Remarried adults tend to spend less on stepchildren, so sometimes reject them, change residence, disrupt harmony and stability, right? If you have a single parent home, it can stabilize in and of itself, right? When you bring in a step parent to that, or to get remarried, it tends to cause instability, at least for a time, while they're kind of settling in. There's growing pains in the family, essentially. But there is a tendency, especially after if there's a remarriage, right, and they have a new child, the step parent will oftentimes focus more on that child than on the children that were already present with the other parent. Stepchildren may experience constellation shifts. If you have two people come together, and let's say you were firstborn, and all of a sudden you have two siblings from the other parent who's coming in who are older than you, so now you're in the middle. That's what the constellation shift is referring to. Maybe you were the baby of the family, but now you're not. You got a sibling who's younger than you because of the two families basically coming together. Differential discipline strategies. One parent wants to spank, the other parent's like, we never spank our children, we only do timeouts and that kind of thing. Okay, that struggle can cause stress, as well as frustration to the parents and the kids. It can cause anger, it can cause sadness, and there's a tendency for destructive behavior. Boys tend to act out destructive behaviors externally, so they'll punch another kid in the nose or something like that, or damage property or things. Girls tend to act destructively to themselves, so cutting and things like that. They're more likely to experience those things. That's not to say always, right? There are going to be some boys that'll cut, and there are some girls who cause external destruction. But those tendencies will begin to show at this stage if there is that stress of families coming together. Again, not a guarantee. You might have even a step parent that you love to pieces, though, is going to be stressful because it's a shift in what you're used to. Slide 24, families during middle childhood, part 13, single families in cultural context. So on average, single parent structure functions less well, right? It's a generality. There's less income, less time, and less stability generally. And emotional academic support is reduced because of the fact that that parent is having to basically focus on everything, so they don't have the time, right? If I was able to be cooking dinner while my wife takes care of the kids, or has that support with the kids, or vice versa, basically that allows for that to happen. If I was a single dad, though, I'd be having to cook dinner and try to reach out to the kids at the same time. So culture is also going to be influential. Example of that would be like single moms. If you're African American single moms tend to do better than most of the other cultural single moms. They have a higher rate of single motherhood, but they function better. Partially because of the fact that they usually have very supportive families. So grandma and grandpa get involved to some extent, or uncles or aunts or things like that, and they kind of step in and fill in the gap of the missing parent. Okay. All right, random fact number 2. When you exercise, the burned fat becomes carbon dioxide, water, and energy, and then you exhale the carbon dioxide and the water. So you actually breathe out all your fat when you exercise. There you go. All right. 25. How am I doing time? I was doing pretty good. Families during middle childhood, part 14. Extended family. So family consisting of parents, their children, and other relatives living in one household. That could be like a grandma or a grandpa or an uncle or an aunt or possibly some cousins. Or uncles and aunts and cousins, or grandparents and uncles and aunts and cousins, and okay, so on and so forth, right? So possibilities are basically endless. 10% of U.S. school-age children are going to live in an extended family setting. The family type distinction is based on who lives in the same household. So within that extended family, it can look very different depending on the individual family makeup. Slide 26, aren't opposing perspectives of why is this an opposing perspective? Aren't extended families always great, right? You got more adults, therefore you got more support, which just seems like it would make everything so much better. When it comes down to it really does depend. Okay, extended families have the potential to be absolutely phenomenal situations, right? You have that many more adults typically that are able to help out, so therefore you have more time with the kids and all these different factors. But it depends on the intergenerational attitudes and income. If you're living together by choice, okay, and you're making a good income still, and everyone is kind of on the same page with goals and all those kinds of things, having an extended family can be a very, very positive experience. On the other hand, if you're living together not because you want to, but because you have to, right? Like financially, you can't afford to do anything else, or if you're not on the same page, like grandma's there, but she's like, she's thinking much differently than what the parents are thinking as far as how the kids should be raised and all those kinds of things. All of these differing perspectives can increase stress pretty significantly within the home. And it makes sense, right? You have one person, there's not really a chance of arguing. You have two people, chances of arguing go up. You now add a third, fourth, fifth, possibly, right, number of people to this mix. Each person you add to the mix basically increases the chances of stress going up because of conflict. So potential for family conflict is evident worldwide. Doesn't matter where you are on the planet. When people get together, there's a chance of conflict. And so therefore, it increases the likelihood of that kind of stress within the family, in an extended family. Yeah. So again, if you're doing it by choice because everyone is happy with that, then that's going to be an easier time. You're going to have less conflict typically in that environment compared to like if it's because you have to. So slide 27, families during middle childhood, part 15, family trouble. So 2 factors increase the likelihood of dysfunction in every structure, ethnic group, and nation: low income or poverty, and high conflict. And oftentimes you're going to have these kind of go hand in hand, right? The high conflict is due to the stress that is put upon you by the fact that you're low income or struggling with poverty. It puts strain on the family. In fact, in the United States, the number one cause of divorce is actually financial issues, the stresses that go along with it. So, and it's going to differ from person to person. Just because you're low income doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have conflict. You might be totally fine, like the Cratchits in Charles Dickens' The Christmas Carol, right? Super poor, but they're doing pretty good together, right? They have that support, and their family is close, and all those kinds of factors, right? So they have low conflict, even though they're struggling with poverty. So that's something important to also keep in mind. Slide 28. And you could also be rich and be a total jerk and just have tons of conflict, right? Like that, again, just having enough wealth doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be a very nice person. So slide 28, families during middle childhood, part 16, poverty and family stress model. So any risk factor damages the family only if it increases the stress on that family, like I just said, right? Like the Cratchits. Adult stressful reactions to poverty is crucial in determining the effect on the children. Another factor here is going to be, do the children know that you are stressed? Okay. And do they know that you're poor? That's going to be another factor. So wealth, generally more income correlates with better family functioning. There's a score gap between schools with high and low income children, partially due to the fact that there's differences in funding. So if you're in a school that has, from a wealthier neighborhood or whatever, generally that school's going to have better funding than a school that's from a lower tax bracket neighborhood. It's larger in the United States than any other nation. The differences in wealth is massive in the United States. And the reaction to wealth may cause difficulty. So parental reaction is going to be the key, right? Personal example, we were very poor when I was young. I didn't realize that until I got quite a bit older. We were extremely poor. We were the family that all the church, we grew up in a small community, and all the churches would bring us like turkey dinner for Thanksgiving. And we were like, wow. As a kid, I was like, they're so nice. They're bringing us turkeys and things. Didn't occur to me that we were like the poor family in the town. But because, basically that was due to the fact that we had relatively low conflict in my family. And my parents were really good at hiding the fact that they were pretty stressed out by our financial state. We eventually got out of it, right? Like when I was young, we didn't struggle with poverty. Life happened. We had several years where we were, and I was just like, didn't know it. So that's going to be a big factor, right, as far as how we interpret it. Interestingly, my younger sister was more aware of it, and she actually she experienced more stress because of it than I did. I seem to be a little bit more clueless on those kinds of things. But anyway. 29, families during middle childhood, part 17, conflict. Family conflict harms children. I shouldn't chuckle, but that's straight up, right? If there's conflict in the family, that's going to be a stressful environment, and the child is not going to fare as well as they would if there was no conflict. Especially, the conflict is going to especially affect them when adults fight about the child and how they should be raised. And so if the child begins to blame themselves for the fighting or for the conflict, that can be extremely damaging psychologically to that child in this stage of life. Fights are more common in step families, divorced families, and extended families. Again, extended families, more people, more chances of conflict. Divorced families, that's part of the reason why they're typically divorced, is because they weren't getting along anyway. And in step families, you have again, the conflicting ideas and everything coming together and trying to kind of mesh, which increases likelihood of arguments and conflict. Although genes have some effect, conflict itself is often the main influence on the child's well-being. Yeah, especially if the kid is witnessing the conflict, okay, and how they kind of observed it. That's going to be the key there, okay. When the boys are aware of conflict happening, they become more external again in their responses to that, whereas girls tend to internalize typically. And so boys will start to act out. Girls will typically, again, cutting, eating disorders and things like that can kind of rise due to the conflict being present in the home. Now, when I'm talking about or conflict too, I'm not talking about like, I don't know, like quiet disagreements or things like that. Typically, people are going to disagree with each other. That's fine. So if you talk it out, that's excellent. And even in that case, if you're doing it in a way where it's civil and you're not yelling at each other and things, it's not high tension. That can be a real learning opportunity for kids to be able to figure out how to really navigate all the complexities of relationship. But it's when the volume goes up, right, and you start it becomes closer to a fight, even if you're not actually trying to punch each other or something. That's where it becomes an issue. Okay. In those cases, if it's a high conflict environment, in many cases, a divorce is actually less psychologically damaging than the conflict was. So the time of conflict, it could be years possibly. That is actually more damaging to the child than if there was to be a divorce. Divorce is always psychologically damaging to children, but the conflict can be more so. So that's something to kind of keep in mind also. 30, families and schools. So children learning science, various nations, 2015. This was the score gap between the affluent and poor schools in the country. Finland, in this case, scored they had the least amount of gap, right? Like it didn't matter which school you went to, basically, poor or rich. It was a good school. United States did pretty darn terrible. New Zealand did even worse. Basically, United States and New Zealand typically are the worst countries in these kinds of ratings, unfortunately. At least we're not the very worst, but it's a bummer that anyone's as bad as we are, honestly, in that area. So yeah. 31. Oh, and by the way, you can find that little graph that we're just looking at there on page 295. Okay. 31, the peer group, part 1. Culture of children. Each group of children has games, sayings, clothing styles, and superstitions that are not common among adults, just as every culture has distinct values, behaviors, and beliefs, right? There's customs, rules, and rituals. If you all ever had the cootie shot, right? Like it was, if as a young boy, when I was like 7 or 8, if I got mixed up with a bunch of girls, you'd have to run back to the guys and get a cootie shot, otherwise you were going to be infected. Didn't exactly know what a cootie was, but just in case, right? That you had to get your shot. Those are going to be the kinds of things, right? Those kinds of weird the songs that we sing and the rhymes that we have and the weird little games and things that we play. Those are generally going to be part of that culture of children. We're looking for a certain appearance, right? We're going to dress the same and the like. And then we're also seeking out independence from adults more and more in this stage. This is a great picture. The picture, you can actually find it on page 296. Got a couple boys playing with a wheelbarrow, which is just a blast. Obviously having fun together. Slightly dangerous, which is probably part of the reason why it's so much fun. But yeah, that's going to be a common kind of aspect of culture of children. Okay. Not necessarily a wheelbarrow, but like playing with tools and things like that. 32, the peer group, part 2, friendship. So school-age children value personal friendship more than peer acceptance, right? Having a friend is more beneficial than being the favorite of the class. Okay. Intense and intimate friendships improve with advances in social cognition and effortful control. The further along we move, the more intense our relationships will become, basically, because we have more to offer, right? The more we have to offer, the more we have to give to the other, the more we generally can receive back. There's a saying in the world of clowning, of all things, but for everything that you give out to others, as far as energy-wise, you receive tenfold back. And that's kind of that's the truth for kids in their friendships, right? For all that they have to give out to have a good, solid friendship, the benefits of it are tenfold back. That's not a scientific number. That's just it is significantly more that they receive from a friendship than what they have to give out. So by the end of middle childhood, close friendships are almost always between children of the same sex, age, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status. We are looking for a mirror image of ourselves, essentially. Okay. There needs to be a little bit of differences because we're looking for something like some excitement, but at the same time, what we're really looking for is a copy of ourselves. Boys are generally looking for someone that they can have joint excitement with, someone to do things with. That actually remains the same for friendships with the male side of our species. So men, even right at an older age, they look for things that they can do together, and they're looking for a companion to do things with. Girls are generally looking for sympathetic reassurance. It's going to be more of an emotional bond and a chance to like sit down and talk to each other, right? And again, this plays out even in adulthood. Guys are typically looking for something to do. Most men activities, you're side by side. Most women's activities, you're face to face. Okay. The idea of going out for like a coffee and just sitting and talking is a much more feminine thing than a masculine thing, as far as just in the sexes. Like if we just do what we naturally do, men typically aren't. That's not going to be their ideal, right? You might do it, but even the idea of like sitting at a bar versus at a coffee table, right? There's those differences. So that these remain relatively stable throughout life for most people. 33, the peer group part 3, popular and unpopular children. Particular qualities that make a child liked or disliked depend on culture, cohort, and sometimes the local region or school. So the qualities could be something like personality, right? You have some people that they're likable. Everyone likes them because they're just enjoyable to be around. You have other people that are more challenging and more difficult personalities. You also, though, might have some things like my friend who was Orthodox Jew and looked different. He wasn't very popular because of the fact that he looked different in his school. So those kinds of factors can play in there too. Popular children in the U.S. typically are friendly and cooperative, and they also tend to be very aggressive, or more aggressive than their unpopular counterparts. So they're more pushy in the U.S. Other cultures is going to look much different, but those are going to be two factors that you're going to see consistently in America. 34, the peer group part 4, unpopular children in the U.S. So neglected, not rejected children. So there's going to be a couple different groups here, right? Neglected, not rejected are going to be the kids that they're just kind of wallflowers. They fade into the background. They're not actively picked on or anything. It's not that anybody just doesn't like them. They just really aren't noticed. Okay, they're neglected by their peers, but not actively rejected. Typically, when this happens, like a kid that is experiencing this, they don't want to go to school. They're not going to enjoy school because they don't have any connections there socially. But at the same time, they're not going to be psychologically harmed from it, typically, especially if they have a friend outside of their school system. Okay, it's going to having a friend is super important, but at the same time, being ignored is better than being basically messed with. There's aggressive rejected children. So these are disliked by peers because of antagonistic confrontational behavior, and they may become bully victims. These are the kids that it's kind of like I'll get you before you get me, just in case. So they're going to be more aggressive. They're going to be more combative. A lot of times, aggressive rejected children are going to be coming from a household where there's a lot of conflict happening, right? Some of the signs of this, when you see this beginning to happen, that can be a red flag that something's not going on well at home. These kids can get picked on because of the fact that they're kind of ornery, right? At the same time, so that like they pick on other people, but they get picked on back in return. Then there's withdrawn, rejected children. These are disliked by peers because of their timid, withdrawn, and anxious behavior. It's the kiddo that's just uncomfortable to be around, right? Um, it's a bummer. You wish that you could like have like looking back when I was a kid. There was one kiddo that I remember specifically, and she was very very timid, and you try to play with her, and she just wouldn't play. Right? She was like everything was scared, deer in the headlights kind of look. And so eventually we just kind of stopped playing with her. But at the same time, she was a target and got picked on pretty roughly by a group of girls. And that's going to be a fairly common factor there. The withdrawn, rejected child oftentimes becomes a target because they're seen as different and uncomfortable. So they're not just ignored; they end up being picked on more deeply. All right, random fact number 3. When shuffling a deck of cards, there are 8 times 10 to the 67th power possible arrangements. That's actually more arrangements. There's more possibilities of differences in the deck of cards than the number of stars that we are visible in our galaxy. That's a lot. Big number. Okay, 35, peer group, part 5, bullying. Repeated systematic efforts to inflict harm on a weaker person, right? So there's actually multiple kinds of bullying. We'll move forward before I talk about that. I think I got that on the next slide. Let me pull this up. Yes, so slide 36, right? So bullying is repeated abuse, basically, in some way, shape, or form. And these are the different ways that bullying can occur. One is physical, right? Hitting, pinching, kicking, pretty straightforward. Pop you in the nose, and that's bullying to some extent. Verbal is going to be that teasing, taunting, or name calling. Relational is destroying peer acceptance and friendships. And then there's cyberbullying, which is a relatively new one. Only in the last 15 years or so has this become a thing, where you use electronic means to harm others. Who suffers the most in these different groups? They found that there is a tendency, boys will tend to use physical and to some extent verbal bullying forms, typically. They're a little more straightforward. Girls, even from an early age, oftentimes will move into the relational bullying forms more. That doesn't mean that they're going to always, and it doesn't mean that boys are always going to be physical, but there's a tendency for those things. What they found is, in the long run, getting punched in the nose doesn't have as much psychological negative effect compared to the relational, right? If you cut me off from the group, that actually is more painful and more long-term damaging than if you just were to hurt me straight out. Okay. Name calling and things like that can also be hurtful. Actually can hurt you more than physical oftentimes, like psychologically, longer lasting damage, depending upon how the child takes it. Okay. And cyberbullying is usually a mixture of verbal and relational bullying kind of combined. Just it happens to be utilizing like social media or something like that in order to do the bullying. All right. Slide 37, the peer group, part 7, victims. Victims of bullying endure repeated shameful experiences with no defense. And that's really the big thing. They have no way of defending themselves, typically. They tend to be cautious, sensitive, quiet, and friendless. Bullies look for weak prey. We're really not that much different from animals, right? A wolf pack or pride of lions. They're looking for the weak, isolated animal, and essentially that's what a victim is in bullying. They're typically the weak. They're isolated from the group, and so they're an easy target. So provide psychological defense against loss of self-respect is crucial. That's the important part. If you know someone who is getting bullied, try to give them the tools to basically defend themselves mentally, okay, from the abuse. Selection for bullying is based on emotional vulnerability and social isolation, not appearance. So just because you wear glasses or you dress different or whatever doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get bullied. What they're looking for is those key parts. Now, if you happen to wear glasses, that can become a point where they pick at you. But I saw a bully one time that he was bullying another kid and he was teasing him for wearing glasses, but the bully wore glasses. I was like, makes no sense. But again, they're picking at a specific thing that they think is a weak spot for that kid. In pervasive bullying, almost any trait can develop into an excuse to exclude and harass a vulnerable child. They're going to look for anything that sets you apart different. It could be that you have a different colored shirt on. It could be that you wear a different brand. It could be that you look funny. It could be that your skin is a different color. It could be that your hair is a different haircut. It could be like there's so many different possibilities, right? It could be that you like a thing, and because you like that, you must be dumb or whatever. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. What it comes down to is if the bullies have picked you and you are that vulnerable child, they're going to find something to bully you for. Okay. 38. The peer group, part 8. Bullies. So popular, proud, and socially dominant. A lot of times the movies represent bullies. They're kind of these social outsiders, and everyone's scared of them, but nobody really likes them and things. That's not usually the case. Most bullies actually are top of the food chain in the system, right? They're the most popular kid, and that lends itself to that bullying. That power can basically they can keep that dominant position by essentially picking a target and putting that target down. They're increasingly skilled at avoiding adult awareness. So a 6-year-old bully is not going to be very impressive, but 9, 10, 11 years old, they're generally going to get better and better and better at bullying, and in ways that are less obvious to adults, right? So picking victims and using non-physical methods to avoid adult punishment. If someone gets bopped in the nose or gets a black eye or something, right, it's pretty obvious that something's happened. But if I'm just calling you names, or if I'm just spreading rumors behind your back or whatever, those you're much more likely to not get caught doing that. It's harder to trace it back to you. Boys typically attack smaller, weaker boys. Girls use words and relational aggression to demean shyer girls. Gay boys, unfortunately, become targets, especially at the end of middle childhood. As you're entering into adolescence, when we're actually starting to kind of develop sexual urges and things like that more, that's when it usually comes out to some extent, and it increases the chances of bullying at that time because it sets you apart as something different. Okay. 39, the peer group, part 9, causes of bullying: early childhood, chaotic home life, ineffectual discipline, hostile siblings, and insecure attachment all are markers for increased chances of bullying. So if you're like 5, 6, 7 years old, 8 years old even, those are, if you see bullying happening, there's a red flag for that kind of stuff happening at home. By middle childhood, 7, 8, 9, okay, middle childhood attempts to gain status and power. You're trying to work your way up the pecking order, basically. And bullying is one method of doing so. Consequences of bullying: serious psychological disorders by age 18, oftentimes for kids who are bullied regularly. Impaired social understanding, lower school achievement, relationship difficulties, higher adult mental illness rates. And they've actually proven this even with monkeys and things. They did a study on baboons, interestingly enough, that they were looking at baboons that were kind of on the lower end of the pecking order and got bullied by the bigger ones. And they found that their levels of cortisol were just exceptionally high. They were basically always stressed out. And with that, none of the other monkeys wanted to be friends with them because they didn't want to get caught up in the bullying things. And so it looked parallel to humans. And what they ended up with finding is that these monkeys had lots more physical illnesses as well as apparent mental illnesses and like the equivalent of depression and anxiety because of these high rates of stress that generally started when they were small, when they were little. And as they grew, they basically were marinating in that hormonal stew of stress hormones, which then made them more susceptible to difficulties in adulthood. So yeah, bullying it's not something to mess with, not something to tease with, but it's tough. It's a hard one to really to eliminate. So slide 40, and in a lot of cases, bullying can occur just right on through life, right? Adults and everything's just because you make it to adulthood doesn't mean that you are now out and clear of bullying or the potential of it. 40, the peer group, part 10, successful efforts to eliminate bullying. Personally finding ways to halt ongoing bullying by ignoring, retaliating, defusing, or avoiding is going to be a big one. So if the person who's being bullied is basically they're the main one who could stop it. Okay, I saw one kid. When I was first in college, I was volunteering at this one school, and off in the distance, I saw a kid he was a new kid and he was just starting to get bullied. It was one of the more impressive things I've seen. He went from bottom of the pecking order, so he was a brand new kid, just like it was like his second day in school. Started to get bullied, and he started making fun of himself, and he did it in a way that it made everybody laugh, including the bullies. Within a week, he was at the top of the pecking order. So he was very successful in figuring out a way to basically halt the bullying and then move himself up into a position where he was very unlikely to be bullied. He had a lot of friends right away because of his actions there. Really nice kid. I'd be fascinated to know what happened to him because the skills he was showing. I think it was in 5th grade. The skills he was already showing were just exceptional. So he probably went on to do some pretty good things. But yeah, so those are going to be the kind of tools to give, right? Like, if this happens, here's how you can handle it to basically kind of defuse it, take the fun out of it, right? Involving the whole school, not just to identify bullies. If I'm just constantly pulling the bullies aside and be like, don't do that, you need to stop that, it won't do anything much. Okay, basically they'll just start learning to avoid me seeing them. But if the whole school is brought in on it and like bullying is really looked down upon, the bully is much less likely to bully, because part of the reason that they're bullying is because they want to move up the pecking order, right? If bullying is seen as an extreme negative, it's something that actually lowers them on the pecking order if they are bullies. They're more or less likely to engage in bullying. And if they do engage in bullying, they're more likely to be called on it by their peers. Engaging bystanders is a big part, and that's going to be where they get called on it, right? Where if one kid is getting bullied, it's because they're usually they're a loner, right? They're separated from the crowd. If the crowd gets in with them, the bullying typically will stop. And then encouraging multicultural sensitivity, right? Just because you're different doesn't mean you're worse or better or whatever. It just means you're different, and that's it, right? So encouraging that and kind of understanding the other, things like that, it'll actually improve the overall functioning later on, but it also gives them the tools that basically reduce the chances and likelihood of bullying at this point. Okay. 41, the peer group, part 11. Children's morality. So children show a variety of skills, making moral judgments, differentiating universal principles from conventional norms, and influences on moral development in middle childhood are going to be peer culture, personal experience, and the development of empathy. So as the brain matures, empathy is generally going to come along with it. And if you have enough experiences where you kind of can see the person from their perspective, it makes you much more likely to try to understand where they're coming from more, right? And the peer culture is going to be a big factor too, right? What the group that you're with, what they see as good and bad and all those kinds of things is going to be generally what you see as good and bad in this stage. We very much want to fit with our group, and therefore we take on the whoever the leader happens to be in that group, we take on their morals typically. But yeah, kids oftentimes at this stage are going to be actually more moral in a lot of ways. What they see as good, they're going to hold to, and what they see as bad, they're going to reject typically. And so they're beginning to be able to understand the universal principles, like this is usually how it is or how it always should be. And they can see that as different from maybe what is actually happening in this environment, right? So universally, this would be a good action, but they can see that that doesn't really get played out here, right? Like lying should be wrong always, but these people lie, and so therefore maybe they're bad people, or maybe it's okay to lie sometimes. Okay, that kind of questioning starts to become a thing. 42, the peer group, part 12, moral rules of child culture. So children align themselves with peers when adult morality clashes with the child's culture. It can very easily become kids versus parents or kids versus adults. So 3 moral imperatives of child culture in middle childhood. These are pretty much universal. Doesn't matter where you go on the planet, you're going to see these. Defend your friends, no matter what. Okay. Don't tell adults about children's misbehavior, like you don't tattle, right? Squealers, whatever it is, kind of thing. You don't squeal, right? Conform to peer standards of dress, talk, and behavior. And that's going to be like we want to fit in. We're looking for our tribe, our clan. And as that, we also, you don't break the trust of your tribe, right? Otherwise, you're going to be isolated and you're going to get bullied more than likely. And those factors are just kind of, it's not necessarily spoken, but it's present, right? It's in their thinking. 43, the peer group, part 13, empathy. So empathy is understanding of the basic humanity of other people, right? We see them as the human that they are, the other person that they are. School-age children can think and act morally, but do not always do so to hidden curriculum or adult values. What they see as good or bad is what they're going to generally play out. Okay. So in some cases, it doesn't align with what the adults think is right or wrong, but they generally will hold true to what they see as right and wrong at this stage. All right. Kohlberg's levels of moral thought. So Kohlberg is a really interesting guy. He was fascinated by this idea of, he was a philosopher actually, and a little bit of a psychologist, but he was fascinated by what basically, how do we make our moral decisions? Like, and where does the thinking come from? So he broke it up. He had 3 stages or 3 levels of moral reasoning, and within each of those 3 levels are 2 stages. Okay. Pre-conventional moral reasoning, that first form is, oh good, and you can find this on page 303 also. But the first form, pre-conventional moral reasoning, is going to be the 2 forms of it are going to be reliant upon rewards and punishment. Okay. This is the most basic form of moral reasoning. Basically, you're going to do something because you're going to get rewarded, and you're going to avoid something because you don't want to get punished. Conventional moral reasoning emphasizes social rules. You do this because the group thinks this. Okay. And then post-conventional moral reasoning emphasizes moral principles, more universal norms and things like that. The book actually has I forgot about this, that it was in the book. The book has a pretty good breakdown of it. So in the pre-conventional moral reasoning, the goal is to get rewards and avoid punishment. This is a self-centered level, right? So stage 1 basically is the might makes right. This has been an argument in philosophy for over 2,000 years, actually over closer to 3,000 years. Socrates was the first one that we know of to recognize this. There's a guy named Thrasymachus. If you read Plato's Republic, you'll hear this argument. He puts forward this idea that basically he who is strong enough to make the rules is in the right, no matter what, until someone stronger comes along. This is essentially what that first stage is seen as. This was the whole Republic essentially is an argument against that. Well worth it. You should read the Republic if you get a chance. It makes you think, which is good. And what's also interesting is it doesn't actually come to a conclusion at the very end. But anyway, we're going to come back. So it's basically a punishment and obedience orientation, right? The most important value is to maintain the appearance of obedience to authority, avoiding punishment while still advancing self-interest. Don't get caught is the thinking here. Interestingly, the pre-conventional small children, this is typically how they make their choices, is in these first 2 levels. I also have friends that work in the prison system, and they found that this is also typically how the prisoners make their moral decisions. They don't really progress into the later forms of morality. It's the idea like, as long as I don't get caught doing something bad, I'm not actually doing anything bad. You're only in trouble if you get caught. So therefore, that's really what matters. Stage 2, look out for number 1, right? We're looking out for ourselves. It's an instrument and relativistic orientation. So everyone prioritizes his or own needs. The reason to be nice to other people is so that they will be nice to you in return. Those are both in the pre-conventional moral. So one is avoiding punishment. The other one is basically get what I can out of it, right? I'll do this thing because I want the cookie or I want the paycheck or whatever. It's not because it's the right thing to do. It's because I think that I'll get something out of it. Okay. Most kids by middle childhood are going to move beyond that. Okay. Conventional moral reasoning is going to be the where you'll find most kids in that 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old. You're going to find this conventional moral reasoning. Its emphasis is on social rules. So it's a parent and community-centered level. So stage 3, good girl and nice boy. The goal is to please other people. So social approval is more important than the specific reward, right? You're looking for people's seeing you as a good person. And so we do the right thing because we want to be seen as good. So yeah, stage 4, law and order. Everyone must be dutiful and law-abiding citizens even when no police are nearby. If you all have ever seen the movie or read the book Les Miserables, looks like Les Miserables, it's a great story. But there's a character in there, Inspector Javert, who is basically stage 4 embodied. Long story short, he's even though the main character has committed crimes, but he has like done all these amazing good things. He's like, I don't care. He's a fugitive, therefore he deserves to go to jail. That is the rules. I'm not going to spoil the ending. I'll just let you know that it's pretty drastic what he ends up doing when he finally comes to the conflict within himself of breaking the rules versus doing what is seen as the right thing. Pretty drastic. Okay. Anyway. But yeah, I'm not going to spoil the ending. So those are going to be the 2 factors there, right? One is I want to look good to others, right? Very, very oriented on I want to be in the good graces of others. The other is that these are the rules that our group has made, so therefore we must stick to them no matter what. Level 3, and real quick too, with level or the conventional moral reasoning, a large percentage of adults never move past that. That's pretty common for people just to kind of settle in there and call it good. Level 3, the post-conventional moral reasoning, where we have the emphasis is placed on moral principles. This level is centered on ideals. This is a lot more work than the previous 2. First one, you're just looking out for yourself basically and avoiding punishment. Second one, you're looking at the group and basically how to fill in and please the group to get, again, it's to some extent it's for our own good, right? But it's at the same time, we're also looking out for the good of the group. This level, we're looking at the good of the universal. So stage 5 of the social contract, where we obey social rules because they benefit everyone and are established by mutual agreement. If the rules become destructive, or if one party doesn't live up to the agreement, the contract is no longer binding. Under some circumstances, disobeying the law is moral. This is where there's flexibility. We're beginning to move into more virtue-based ethical thinking. Okay, you will very rarely see children in middle childhood achieving this level of thinking. I have seen a couple, but it's very rare. Stage 6, I honestly have never seen a child in this level within middle childhood. But stage 6 is the universal ethical principles. So the universal principles, not individual situations, level 1, or community practice, level 2, determine right and wrong. Ethical values such as life is sacred are established by individual reflection and religious ideas, which may contradict egocentric, or level 1, or social and community level 2 values. The community might be saying one thing and you are completely going against it. Socrates and Aristotle and Plato and most of the religious leaders of the world, the Buddha, Jesus Christ, I'm trying to think of some other ones. To some extent, Muhammad, no, he doesn't really fit as much with that one. But there's a tendency towards that. It's that ultimate good. And a lot of times they end up getting killed for it. Okay, Socrates died for it. Jesus was killed for it. The Buddha didn't get killed for it, but anyway, there's that tendency, right? You're looking for the ultimate good, and then trying to live by it, no matter what. It's rare. That's a rare one even in adults. That level of conviction for seeking the good. If you really want to dig into that, take ethics. It's a fun class. Maybe you could take it from me. Who knows? Maybe someday I'll teach it again. But so yeah, keep an eye out for that. Anyway, 45. Some criticism to Kohlberg. Pros: Child's use of intellectual abilities to justify moral actions was correct. In fact, his research basically has proven out universal around the world. Cons. In his initial research, he was very culture and gender differences were completely ignored. He was working with all boys. They were all approximately the same age, within like 4 or 5 years of each other, and they were all white. Okay, so exclusive boy sample. Difference between child and adult morality is not addressed at all, and rational principle values were more than individual needs. So that was the criticisms, but the reality is that what he found, even though he didn't maybe go as deep into it as he should have, what he found it really does hold up to be true. Both psychology and philosophy use Kohlberg's research today in understanding morality and how we process our choices and basically make our choices about what is good and bad in the world. Right, 46. We have a sharing what is mine little piece. You can find this on page 304, as well as some information on page 305, similar kind of information. What they did with this one, this was a study they did. They took kids from 5 different countries, so United States, Canada, South Africa, Turkey, and China. Different age groups. They broke them up. They gave them stickers. They gave them 10 stickers, and they asked these kids to, if after they gave them the stickers, they said, "These are your stickers." They said, "A kid is coming in later, and they're not going to get any stickers. Basically, the only stickers that they would get are the stickers that you would be willing to share with them. Would you be willing to share some of your stickers?" Okay. If you notice on here, Canada pretty much always wins. They were very sharing. United States and China tied-ish in most of the stages. The United States was a little ahead, but they tied more often than not. Turkey and South Africa were by far the lowest in every category. So 5 to 6 year olds were typically very stingy, but the older you got, the more likely you were to share your things. South Africa and Turkey though were the kind of the except, or they were still more likely to, but not a lot more likely to. They went from maybe sharing 1 to 2 stickers to sharing a little over 3 stickers on average. Why? Okay. Think about that for a second. Pause the video if you need to, and I'm going to keep on going with this. So why might they be less likely to share their stickers compared to the Canadian, United States, and Chinese kids? All right. Pause, and then unpause. I'll come back. Okay, assuming you paused. Anyway, the thinking here is actually that it's the background of the child. Turkey and South Africa have a tendency of being very poor countries. And so it's not necessarily that these kids are going to be more stingy than the Canadian and United States kids. Now if you're from Canada, United States, or China, sacrificing some stickers isn't as big of a deal for you because you are more likely to be able to get them, right? Because you're in an economy that has that available. Turkey and South Africa are much less likely to be able to get more of them. What they found were that in the poorer countries, you were less likely to share the stickers with a stranger coming in. But these kids were also more likely to share if it was their people. So when they got into families and things like that, they were much more likely to share their stickers with their siblings and cousins, the people who really meant something to them, rather than a stranger. They were going to look out for themselves and for the people who were directly connected to them over that of a stranger in the community. So, yeah, changes in age. As we age, we get less stingy, but at the same time, our culture really does influence how that plays out in us. Okay, the peer group, part 16, slide 47, end of the thing. Teaching morality. Once children understand moral equity, they may be more ethical than adults. Morality can be scaffolded with mentors using moral dilemmas to advance moral understanding, empathy, and moral regulation. This is something that I think that schools should actually include in education. There should be an exercise, and they've actually done some experience with this, and it has proven to be very effective. But there should be exercises done where you're given a moral dilemma that there is no right or wrong answer to. Okay, and then see where you land, right? Kohlberg, actually, in doing his research, what he would do is he would give them an ethical dilemma and then ask them why they thought what they thought. So he gave an example of one of the dilemmas he gave was you had a person a man whose wife he just found out is deadly ill. She's dying of a disease. She has a month to live, and there is no cure, except there is one pharmacist who has found a cure for it. Okay, he's the only pharmacist in the whole world that knows the cure, who has the medicine that would save this man's wife. But he's asking, and it cost him $1,000 to make the medicine. He's asking $10,000 for the medicine. Okay, he's making a decent profit on this medicine, right? The man goes to the pharmacist and says, my wife is dying. I don't have the money now. I can get it though. And the man says, no, I need the money. So the man goes, he starts to try to gather as much money as he can in the day. He comes back, he has $1,000. And he says, I've got $1,000. Can I give you this $1,000 now? You give me the medicine so I can save my wife. And then I'll give you the rest of the money later, or we can figure something out. And the pharmacist says, no, if you don't have the $10,000, I will not give you the medicine. Later that night, the man with the wife breaks into the pharmacist's office and steals the medicine to give to his wife. Was his actions good, bad, or what? And why do you think so? Okay, and that, given the answers, he would be able to determine where you landed basically in those 6 different categories. Those kinds of moral dilemmas will help children develop basically, and it doesn't have to be even that big. It could be, you saw your friend take a cookie that he wasn't supposed to. What do you do? Okay, something like that, where it causes you to basically kind of practice and think it through. You are more likely to act morally when you're put in a situation where you actually need to, where it's real life, versus kids who don't. And so they found that even just like 10 minutes a day, where the teachers would give a little practice thing and they have a chance to discuss it and things, it increased their ability to connect and to make good ethical choices later in life. All right. Last random fact, I just realized I forgot to give it. A study found that video games, and this is one study, I still haven't got a chance to really do the research on this. I'm curious about this one. I was looking at random facts and things, and this is one that popped up. There was a study that found that video games were more effective at battling depression than therapy. If that's true, that would be amazing. So I need to do more research on that one. But or maybe you can. Anyway, but yeah, or maybe you could play video games if you struggle with depression. But anyway, in any case, I don't know what kind of video games. I don't know how long they played it or whatever. But that's a random fact for you. So yeah, with that, don't forget to do the quizzes. Message me if you have any questions. Let me know, and we'll go from there. Have a wonderful day, evening, morning, whatever time it happens to be, night. And I will see you in the next video. The next video will be looking at at adolescence, so chapter 9, moving into the next age group. Have a great one, and we'll see you later.